Saturday 3:30 energy. I'm just loving that. Yes, keep that going. Every 5 or 6 words we say, just a little juice of that. Yes. It's going to be very helpful. Helpful and wildly inefficient. It's beautiful. I love it. We will get through this. Phenomenal. I don't have to do anything. We're ready for questions. I'm Austin. Who was at the show last night? Yes. I saw a small contingent of hands. That's the door. Feel free to this is not concerning you. No, seriously, thank you for coming. That was, I will speak on their behalf for a second before shutting up, that last night was absolutely amazing. The audience was you collectively, and those not here were very generous and very loving. And, you know, if we're up on stage doing that and nobody shows up, you know, the little nerdy joke is that it's just another rehearsal. And the unfunny nerdy joke. And you guys make it what it is. You guys make it the reason why we do it. And on top of that, you know, speaking as a composer myself, it validates all those just thousands of hours of late nights, solitary, alone in your room, pulling out your hair and saying, like, I hope any of this is going to be good and is going to be worth it. And to be able to perform like that and have the kind of response, I mean, it makes everything worth it. So thank you guys so much for coming and making it all happen. So despite the fact that all I've done so far is talk, my main goal is to talk very little because I want to hear from these guys, and I'm sure that's why you're here as well. Like I said, my name's Austin. I am also a composer. I've worked on games. Shameless plug, there's a game downstairs called The Pathless that I worked on that is having its first public display. Check it out if you can. That's enough about me. Why don't you guys just, for the 3 of you that are here because someone brought you here and you think you're in a different room than the one you're actually in, why don't you all, Ashley, why don't you kick it off and we'll make our way and just tell us who you are.
Okay, I'm Ashley Barrett, and I have been singing with Darren for Supergiant Games since the beginning, so 10 years, starting with Bastion and working on all the games, so Bastion, Transistor, Pyre, and now Hades.
Hi, I am Darren Korb. I'm the audio director for Supergiant Games, and I've composed the music for all of the games, and I do sound design and voiceover direction and that sort of thing. And I've been there from the very get-go doing that. So that's who I am.
Yeah.
I'm Logan Cunningham, actor. I do what Darren tells me to.
So why don't we start kind of in the early days, and Darren, why don't you just give us a sense, because again, you heard a little bit of this last night, but when Bastion came out, it obviously made a huge impact, and not just for players and people like me that love playing the games, but also the other half of me as a professional in the game industry. All of us turned and said, who's this guy? Because this person no one had heard of showed up and did this score that just absolutely made everybody pay attention. And what blew my mind was how humble the origins were and how much was done with no resources. Because sometimes, you have games like Destiny and stuff where they're recording giant orchestras and spending literally millions of dollars just on the music. And that was utterly not the case on especially Bastion. Yeah. So, tell us about those early days, but also the thing that blows me away is that you have this lifelong history with the rest of the folks at Supergiant that also is just kind of mind-blowing to me.
Yeah, so Logan and I met on the first day of high school, I believe. And
big bully, Darren. You were,
and then,
you were a total asshole.
And then further back from that, Logan and Amir Rao, one of the co-founders of Supergiant Games, they played soccer together.
Played youth soccer together
when they were like 12. And Amir and I had been friends since we were about 8 years old. have been playing D&D together like almost that entire time. We still do. We have biannual D&D retreats now, but with also a couple group of friends. And so when Supergiant started happening, when he, I was very excited for him as a sort of a lifelong gamer. When he began kind of working in games, he got a job at EA LA, working on the Command and Conquer series. And I was just excited vicariously, for him, through him, and what he was doing. And I got to visit, and I was, and it never occurred to me that I myself could have a career in games. I just didn't.
About how old were you guys at that time?
At that time, we were, middle 20s.
Middle 20s.
Middle 20s, I think. So when I started working on Bastion, I think I was 24, 20, yeah, maybe 20, 25, probably 25, something like that. Yeah, 25 when I started working on Bastion. So, and when it came out, I was around, like 27. So, yeah, so when he was starting the company with, he left EALA with a couple of other guys around the same time, and Gavin Simon and he co-founded Supergiant in his mom's living room for a second, and then they moved, and his dad was kind enough to sort of allow the company to operate out of his house. And so, that was all happening, and he visited me in New York one time, and he said, hey, I'm going to start this game company, and we're gonna make a game. Do you would you be up for doing all of the audio and music and everything for this? Just because I know you, and I think you can do it. And that was basically how I kind of fell into this. At the time, I was doing, doing kind of whatever I could to have a career in music in some way. I was writing music and interning in a recording studio and trying to produce stuff for people in New York and taking some gigs as a musician here and there, like hired gigs and stuff. But just trying to figure it out. And so when this happened, I was like, yeah, of course I want to do that. That sounds amazing.
But it's worth pointing out that Darren's the audio director at Supergiant, which is kind of a threefold job. That's writing all the music and either doing or supervising the creation of all the sounds, every sword clash, every footstep, all that stuff, which is sort of musical and very much also not. But then there's the third really technical, very incredibly challenging part of figuring out how to actually make that work in the game. And how did you even wrap your head around? Because I mean, as a musician, they don't teach that part.
No. I mean, I was interested in film and had, Logan and I took film classes together, like in high school, and then we did some like community college stuff, over the summer, again, the summers in between, and like we made some movies together and stuff. And so I have background in, like video editing and kind of understanding like how stuff feels weird without sounds, and like just the idea that you need sounds to have the picture make sense and stuff. So I was sort of aware of that. I never really made sound effects, but I had an understanding of that. And on Bastion, honestly, it was just like, well, I don't know, let's try this. And it was just a lot of experimentation, trying to see what works. When I first started working on Bastion, I approached it very like, well, what does it sound like when you hit something with a hammer? And I would use like a literal sound of something hitting something with a hammer, and you put it in the game. I was like, oh, that's not what I want to hear in this situation. It's not what you expect. But what does it sound like when there's like you want it to be exaggerated, you don't want it to be exactly realistic. And I found that out very quickly, that you need to like, you need to enhance it, yeah, because if you just do the sound of like swinging a hammer, it doesn't really make a sound, you're not going to be, you want like a big like whoosh, you don't like it doesn't actually make a sound.
Yeah, real life is surprisingly disappointing.
Yes, exactly. I very quickly, learned that.
A lot of fans of disappointment, it seems.
Yeah. So yeah. I mean, I a lot of it honestly was just sort of trial by fire and throwing myself into the deep end and trying to.
It's insane how well that worked, isn't it? Like, not a lot of people could do what this guy did. What all of them did. I mean, to stepping into this blindly. I mean, Ashley, did you have any experience with games at all before Darren pulled you in?
Not at all, no. And
was it even a goal? Was it even one of those things that if someone had said, like, name me 10 wish list items, would that have even been on the list?
No, not at all.
Are you ashamed to be here right now?
So ashamed. No, but I seriously honestly, I mean, video game music is still kind of unknown to a lot of people in mainstream, like whatever, people don't understand that there's a whole world of like this new amazing music made specifically for games. So when he asked me when I was 24, I thought it was like, do, 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 do. I was like, sure, I'll do video game music with you, Darren. I don't know what that means, but I'm with you, I'm here. And then we did the first song, Build That Wall for Bastion, and it was like, holy cow, this could be like a song on its own, And
It's almost like you wrote real music. That's crazy.
I know. Well, that just goes to show you how little I knew, like jumping into it. And it's like a whole world. It's the best world ever. It's like the best people, the best community, the most talent, the most passion. It's so cool.
I mean, yeah, you got to have 1,000 people sing along with you last night on Build That Wall. So that was amazing, by the way. Well, so then, Logan, what's your end of? Obviously, we know that it goes.
First of
back
all,
to
what is this?
It's a satchel. It's a satchel. It has my quest items. Leave me alone.
I don't want to see it.
Actually, I have no idea what's in there. I'm holding that on behalf of someone, and I haven't dared open it. So,
What was your question?
who are you, and what are you doing here? Well, obviously, we know you guys went back to high school, but like, as an actor, I guess similar with Ashley, like, was game acting and voice performance and all that part of kind of your trajectory, or is Darren responsible for pulling you into that?
It wasn't the goal. Like, I didn't even study acting in college, but I did it earlier, like in high school with Darren, and we did like improv together. We have like a big reunion show coming in the summer that I'm very nervous about.
If you're in San Jose, California over the summer,
It's free.
I didn't even know about that. That sounds awesome.
yeah.
So I was just like in New York living with Darren post-college, and I was pretty much just like being an actor as a favor to friends who were playwrights or filmmakers or making like student films or no-budget films. And then I knew Amir had quit his job and started a startup company that was a video game company, and it was like, all right, cool. And I just dropped it randomly when I saw him like over Christmas 2009. It was like, hey, if you need like voiceover at all, let me know. And he was like, yeah, cool. And then 2 months later, and at this point Darren was like, well, you were well into it by then. I was at like a Valentine's Day dinner.
I love how it's all holiday centric.
Yeah,
here.
yeah, every holiday.
Then on St. Patrick's Day was the next step.
Vladimir was like, hey, yeah, so we actually want to try a thing with voiceover with like a narration thing. Would you be down to just like try it? And I was like, yeah, cool. Because Darren and I were roommates, so he was just down the hall. It wasn't even a hall. We didn't have a hall.
We didn't have a hall.
You should have
Yeah, no
seen,
hall.
oh my God, their apartment was special, that apartment, back in the day.
It was not large, and it had many mice inside of it.
Eight mice in a week.
Yeah, yeah.
It's like Hanukkah.
Yes.
So yeah, I recorded essentially an audition for Bastion, and they liked it, and just kept going with it.
And as I recall, all those early day voiceovers were done in Darren's closet.
Yes.
So yes, they were. So actually, even before the closet, when Logan and I were in that apartment, I didn't even like have a closet that I
Before
could
the
use.
closet.
But in the before times, there was like a period where I recorded some of the music for Bastion, and then like the sort of trial stuff we did for narration, we recorded in my room. I had a room and I had a loft bed. I had my computer under the loft bed, and I would hang like
It's called a dorm.
It was not in fact a dorm, because you don't
It
pay like
looked like a
Williamsburg
dorm.
rent for a dorm. It was terrible. But I mean, not terrible. I loved living there, and we had a lot of fun. But
But the mice were definitely
a lot
part
of
the family.
the mice didn't pay rent also, which would have been nice of them.
They didn't live long enough to really get to know them.
Yeah.
But that you kept it dispassionate. Then.
Yeah, I would hang a comforter between my computer and the microphone, so you wouldn't get computer noise in the microphone, and I would put like moving blankets on the walls and on the floor to just make the room sort of reasonable to record in, and I recorded like.
Sure, the neighbors were not convinced there was a meth lab in there.
No, yeah, I mean, and I did, I think it was In Case of Trouble was recorded that way, and a few other like early Bastion tunes were recorded in that space, and then like all the like very first narration stuff we did was recorded there, and then once I moved to like a different apartment, I had a closet that could actually support, blankets and had enough
Graduated
space
to
for
the closet.
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I didn't even realize the closet was literally the upgrade.
Yeah, the closet was an upgrade.
So
It was.
here I am, like he started in a closet. It's like hold my water.
Yeah.
for a second.
Well, actually.
Yeah, that's crazy. Well, what's astounding is that there's this belief that you need all the bells and whistles, and you need the $1 million studios and the $5,000 microphones and all that, and anything short of that is just going to be amateur. But I'm of the mind that if it's a good tune, if it's a great piece of music in the hands of a musician that knows his way around the guitar and whatever else he's doing, you really don't need much. Like the quality will get through whatever humble setup. And same thing, like if the performance is good, the singing is great, all that. It's like, what else do you need? People respond to that, right? Like you feel that, and then you just inch your way next time, maybe not even a closet. So actually then, yeah, I mean, obviously Bastion comes out initially a little slowly, as I recall, and kind of caught fire over time, right? So was there a window where you weren't really sure if this was a gamble that was going to kind of go anywhere? Or?
Logan, you want to take that?
I'm actually not asking Logan, but Logan,
Who are you asking, me?
I just like that you're usurping my I have very little authority here, so don't take it away from me.
I just didn't know where that was targeted.
The thing is,
Logan, if you would, I would love to hear from you.
well, this is all going to be about Darren.
Make it
Because-
very, very ugly then.
Because Bastion sales-wise got off to like a relatively, not slow start, but it did okay. But the thing that was immediately a hit was the soundtrack. That was the one aspect of the game that was like universally loved. So sales of the soundtrack, I mean, we had to scramble. Like it didn't even occur to us to people are going to want the soundtrack to this game.
Yeah.
So we had to make that. You had to you had to master it. You had to did everything. Did all the songs have titles?
Yeah, well, I had to they did not have title. I had to have Greg help me come up with titles for all the songs and stuff.
But for 3 months or so after Bastion first shipped on XBLA, the soundtrack sales were literally keeping the lights on in the office.
Yeah, also, I remember part of that was we were working with the publisher at the time, and because of the way the payment structure worked, we finished Bastion at exactly the moment where where the studio ran out of money, basically, and and we needed to be paid for the copies that were sold, but we couldn't for several months. So actually, yeah, I think that's true that we had income from the soundtrack on Bandcamp right away that we just got ourselves. So I think there were a stopgap measure to keep the lights on.
We made the CDs in the first 4,000 or so. Darren and I shipped out ourselves.
Yeah, from my apartment, it was filled with just mailers and CDs, and we just watched
all of the Larry Sanders Show.
Yeah, while we were labeling stuff, just packaging, watching Larry Sanders, and then half a Twin Peaks, I think, and we did, yeah. The good half, yeah. Yeah. Yes, that's the half.
So once obviously, did something happen actually? I can't remember this. Did something kind of catalyze Bastion then kind of clicking and taking off? Was there some event or something that kind of made it find its way?
Well, yeah, there's a few things, I think, right?
Well, the first thing I remember is our very first Steam sale. It was a midweek madness sale. It was 66% off or something. It was.
How long after release would this?
This was Bastion came out July 20th. This was like Halloween.
And it came out a month later on PC. So it was August or something on PC. And then I think it was in the fall there was a sale. I think that's about right. Yeah.
And we had there was a sales number. It was okay, 300,000 copies sold. At that point we can consider it a hit. And we were not there yet. And then that Steam sale happened, and we just sailed past it. And then a few weeks after that, the first awards nominations started coming out, and then things really started picking up.
Yeah, I think that sort of after we came out on Steam, and started to generate some momentum there, and then the award season happened, and we started getting some buzz and winning some awards and stuff. I think that the game caught people's attention and word of mouth and all that stuff, and it spread. And we came out on more platforms sort of over time, you know, and that I think helped as well. We came out on iOS eventually, and we came out on you know, whatever, kept porting it. As new platforms came out, we'd port it to
Apple
that.
TV.
Neo Geo.
Yeah, that one's not on Apple TV.
Damn it.
But the
Yeah.
other, yeah.
But then it just goes to show. I mean, it was probably a little dicey and like a little kind of nerve-wracking, because
Yeah.
I think we all, speaking for me at least, think of it as this monster hit, and I guess eventually, kind of in aggregate, it is. I mean, millions of copies sold by this point. But you know, there's people who've staked their whole livelihood on this gamble working, and when those first few months are really slow, it's like, well, we may all be on the job market soon and like really just starting over again.
Yeah.
And that sucks. It's a really, really frail position to be in.
I remember that's when I learned about what Reddit was, because it was my cousin was like,
Can't be a good
"You're
story.
you're trending on Reddit or something like I don't know." It was like during Build That Wall stuff.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's for me. I was like, "What is this? This has taken a whole new life of its own that I didn't."
Was that like the moment when you kind of realized this is a thing?
I was just
this
like
is
weirded
kind
out
of
that
a
people knew my
phenomenon?
name, and like he was like, "She's my cousin." You're like, "No," and then I was, "What? They're not believing you?" I don't know.
Was it actually your cousin?
Yes.
Okay. I think we should find that person then that was like doubting, and we should just set the record straight. Find like a 9-year-old
Yeah.
Reddit thread. You're like, I just want to step in here.
This is in
Holiday
fact my
thing.
cousin.
Yeah.
This is, yeah,
True.
exactly. Well, okay, so then at some point in there, obviously, then it comes time to work on Transistor. And that's always the big question, you know, of if you make a thing that's good, now there's the whole sophomore outing. And it's a lot, it's redoubled pressure. It's this, you know, both of your own making and then of everybody now paying attention and saying, well, how's it going to be? And there's you know, just an endless list of second time out of the gates that were incredibly disappointing. Because it's, you know, not everybody makes Empire Strikes Back as the second one. It's pretty rare. You guys somehow managed to do that. So like, how does that even happen? How did the process, you know, was it assumed that the two of these folks would be, you know, right in there with it from the start, or was it once again kind of blank page and then just perfect people for the roles, that kind of thing?
I mean, I think we knew we wanted to keep the crew together that worked on Bastion, but we knew we wanted to do something different. We didn't want to make we didn't want to be the studio that just made Bastions forever, you know. So we wanted.
Did you feel kind of, there's certain temptation, I would think, to do that though, because it's been validated as successful and like everybody's got to eat. But were you able to pretty aggressively say, nope?
I think none of us were. That didn't excite any of us as much as doing something different. Is really what it came down to. And I think honestly, part of the thing that made that an easy decision maybe was that Bastion did not seem to be a hit initially. It seemed to be doing well, but not to be, you know. So we're like, well, okay, well we keep the lights on. Let's do something else, you know. So the temptation was not maybe as strong as it might have been had it been like, you know,
Instant gratification.
yeah. So, but I think all of us were excited to kind of create a new universe, create a new world for the second game, and yeah, you know, it's certainly, there were a lot of things about the development of that game that were really challenging.
Before you get into that, was the vision of that new world something that was agreed upon really early? Some games wander a lot before they kind of land on the thing that eventually ships, but
Yeah.
Transistor's so distinctive in every way, and between the performances and between the look of the actual world relative to Bastion, the music is wildly different from Bastion. Like, was all that pretty early kind of, we've got it, we've landed on it?
I think we went to like science fiction future
Yeah.
pretty early.
Yeah, we had the notion of doing some sort of like cyberpunk-esque thing initially. Then we kind of like went through and like looked at all the sort of tenets of cyberpunk, and we're like, well, that's kind of lame, and so is that. So let's just do I mean, it was sort of rooted in that, but we
What's
want
something that was, what was one of those
we just
like
didn't want,
rejected
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to
tropes?
say that. What I mean to say is,
Oh, we need some dirt. This
well,
is
yeah. So what I mean to say is, we didn't want to do something that was we don't want to lean into stereotypes of cyberpunk. Is sort of.
But I'm curious, like, what
yeah,
would
like
be an
we did
example?
like dudes in trench coats and whatever and all that stuff. You know what I mean?
Overtly Blade Runner.
Yeah, we just didn't want to. Yeah, you know, there's enough of that. We want to do our own kind of spin on that.
Too few striking redhead
Yeah.
characters in Cyberpunk.
Well, I think we knew. I think the world of the game was something that we settled on pretty early, but I think the details were really in flux for quite a while. We had about, I mean, gosh, it must have been like a year of, almost or it's at least 6 months of pre-production on that game, like solid. Before we, I mean, we were
It's like a
prototyping.
year and a half.
A year and a half?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Well, I'm.
Because we
I
were
love how Logan knows this far better
Yeah.
than you do.
No, I mean, I was like head down in the music stuff for
I
a
have
while.
a lot of time in my hands. No, because like Bastion kept us busy for like a year and a half.
That's right. That's true. Yeah, because
Like porting and stuff.
yeah,
that's it,
yeah, because a lot of us were involved in doing the iOS version of Bastion and stuff, and and just trying to keep that alive while we were sort of beginning to spin our wheels on Transistor.
But, like the nice thing about pre-production on Transistors, we had a whole team, which we did not have on Bastion. Like Gen Z, our art director,
Yep.
she replaced someone on Bastion. She wasn't there at the very beginning. It was Transistor she was. So she was able to, she was there on the ground floor. And so like all the environments, and it was just like a completely different experience.
Yeah, and we were.
It's a huge difference, especially coming out of a thing where everybody's kind of got a little bit of a shared vocabulary now and shared experiences. I mean, I remember asking the two of you on Darren and Ashley if that was true over the course of these 10 years, if, you know, doing song after song after song, like let you develop a kind of shorthand with each other, because that's invaluable, and it's got to be the same between the two of you as well, but everybody else on the team, I would think. So
Yeah.
Transistor, it's like the pressure's higher, but everybody's kind of, there's momentum from the beginning, and that you're not starting truly from scratch.
Right. Yeah, I mean, I think there's definitely the experience of working together and making something together is super valuable, and it allowed us to.
As one word, it's super valuable.
Yeah, super valuable. Allowed us to step further outside of our comfort zones creatively, you know, for sure, which is something that we really tried to do on Transistor, and then sort of each subsequent game we've tried to like expand or at least me personally, and I know Jen and other members of the team have tried to push where we are comfortable creating and try to expand what that means and what that includes, you know, what our comfort zone is, you know.
So, you know, from the perspective of conducting the concert and helping Darren put it together, it was interesting to kind of, I'd been listening to these scores from the beginning. I never played Pyre, full confession, but I love Bastion and Transistor. I also
shocked.
haven't played Hades. I know. I really don't. They didn't actually ask me to be up here. I just wandered up, and they were very polite and accommodating. So yeah, exactly. Just this mysterious thing that the TSA would have destroyed long ago. So as someone who was, you know, kind of looking freshly at the music over these 10 years through the course of putting together these concerts for PAX, you know, West and then now East, it's my perception that the music has evolved a lot over those 10 years. And, you know, Bastion it's so charming, and it's so fun, and it's so kind of reckless and just like, here's me and, you know, warts and all. And then Transistor is like, it seems to me, tell me if I'm just kind of projecting, because even though we didn't do the show chronologically of like Bastion, Transistor, Pyre, Hades, you can feel this growth and this reaching of like, okay, what have we done? Now let's try to somehow push harder. And in every direction, production-wise, the music is increasingly kind of adventurous, you know, weird harmonies and really pretty challenging vocal lines for both of you. And was that a conscious thing? Is that just restlessness, or is that like asking yourself in a pointed way, you know, how do I push myself?
Yeah, I mean, I think I think for me it's both. You know, it really, for me, a lot of the aesthetic choices I'm making on a project are just based on what is the world of that game, and what is going to make sense to me musically. Like what does it seem like the music of that world should sound like? The character of Red writing these songs, what's she going to write about? What's her music going to sound like? Really trying to kind of dig deeply into the world to find the palette for the game and the approach to the writing for that game. And also, you know, it's me sort of trying to for my own personal interest, to some degree, just sort of see what else I can do, see sort of how far I can sort of push where I'm comfortable, and expand that area creatively.
It's crazy because, on a lot of the games I've worked on, I've occasionally written songs. And when I do that, they like songs, like what they did last night, proper verse, chorus, that kind of stuff, not non-instrumental, non-orchestral or whatever. And very often when I do that, I'm having to essentially coerce the team into letting this happen because they just think, why? That's so weird to have just a song in the middle of the game. Of course, now I'm like, well, Darren does it, and I can get that off the gate a lot more easily. But it makes me realize: did you have to the creative sort of chemistry between you, the three of you, and Supergiant in general? And the fact that there's so many like childhood relationships there, my brain will never be able to fully wrap around that these creatively compatible people could all just kind of ambiently grow up around each other and then come together and make such incredibly remarkable games. It's just insane. It is. It's just stupid. I hate it. No, it's actually just so beautiful and it's so amazing but it is hard to understand. And so the question is, would you have to ever kind of convince, especially as you got more adventurous from Transistor into Pyre and into Hades, have you had to kind of sell them on anything? Or is it just like, hey, we've known each other for several decades, just you do you, and I'm sure it'll be fine?
Yeah, I mean, I think that with each project, there's actually less like having to approve stuff. Because, like, even if it's more adventurous, we just having worked with each other, like we all have so much respect for the other members of the team, and I know I personally am just sort of blown away by the work that everybody else does. So I think we sort of have a little bit of like a craftocracy where you are the sort of lord of your own craft, and you can kind of whatever call you think is going to be best for the game is sort of like okay, to some extent. I think that's sort of how we operate a little bit. So yeah, I mean, when I wanted to try some crazy stuff on Transistor, I'm like, okay, I have this idea where I have this song, and it's got like 4 or 5 stems, and then like as you're fighting this boss, it's gonna like all transition to this like crazy messed up version of the song, like one by one. Let's do that. And you're like, okay, all right, we'll figure it out. Let's do that. That's a good idea. Yeah, let's try that. And so I didn't have to.
You pitch your ideas while everyone's drinking, and usually
Yeah.
skip things over the line.
Yeah.
Sounds a little less bizarre.
Yeah.
But you knew with Transistor, you knew you wanted more actually like early on.
Absolutely. Yeah, I knew I wanted.
You wanted to make a musical.
Yes, I did. I really
They
wanted.
basically are musicals at this point.
Yeah. Yeah, I know. For Transistor in particular, I knew like, okay, I want to have a lot more songs in this game because the character's a singer and.
And how, for those who don't know, how do you know each other?
So Ashley and I, well, do you want to, I feel like I've been talking too much.
No, you're talking the good amount. Yes, well, I fall into that childhood thing because we knew each other. We're all from the Bay Area, and we knew each other from a theater company that we both did, kind of like adjacent to each other. His brother I think your brother is the one who kind of shepherded me in via other theater people.
Yeah, we have a bunch of mutual theater friends.
Yeah.
Who introduced us when my brother and I were working on a project. And
They wrote a musical.
We did.
He's
We wrote a
underselling
musical.
it, and it's awesome. It should absolutely come. It should come
I think that'll be next year's PAX, right? We're going to stage that musical. Would you all agree to show up for that?
And
That's a binding contract.
so yeah, we got connected through a bunch of mutual friends for that project, and I worked with Ashley on that. I was really impressed with her vocals. And when I was doing Bastion and trying to think of who might be an appropriate vocalist for the song I had in mind, Ashley was the first person that I thought of, and asked her to do it. And she's like, "Yeah, sure, sounds cool."
And he writes like in my wheelhouse, as we say, and which is really nice for a singer because it's like where I feel really comfortable, and I think where. I don't know, my voice sounds the most unique, I don't know, which is different than other singers. But I think going back to your whole, this humble beginnings, everyone at Supergiant is like just the best human. So having everyone come back, it's like, I don't know, hopefully it was a no-brainer, but like, I don't know, we all like stick together, and there's never been a fear of like, well, I guess a little bit of a fear where I'm like, is he gonna find a better singer? Like, is he gonna just like, be like, now I'm gonna hire, I don't know, someone else, Ariana Grande or something. No. Yeah. But yeah, it's so great because
I could totally picture Ariana Grande singing The Spine. That's
it'd probably
just
be awesome.
absolutely.
Who?
Yeah.
Who?
Good answer. Logan. Yeah. Yeah, but I always was like, you know, knocking on wood because every time, like when Bastion happened, I was like, well, that was a cool thing to do. And look at this cool reception. We won awards. Like, that's awesome. And then when Transistor, I was like, there's more? Like, we could do this again?
Yeah.
And it feels like every year in the last 10 years, it's been like, what? Like, we can sing with an orchestra?
I remember
It's just crazy.
it was the rare occurrence that I was going to record in the office in San Francisco, because they're in San Francisco, I live in New York, so I work remotely. But I was out there, and it just so happened like we could do a session there, and I got into the booth after you, and you'd left your script. And like I was so
God, you've
like,
never told me this before.
For actors to like to look at like another actor's script and like, oh God, how does she do it? What does she do? To see like what do you underline? What do you mark up and stuff? I loved it. You didn't mark it. You didn't do very much.
I do a lot. Mine are like all
A lot of, like,
squiggles.
doodles.
Yeah.
I do like things up, and then when he tells me to go down, it's all like geometry, you know?
So yeah, it's like a visual cues for
Yeah.
like, okay, this one I do a squiggly up, and on this one I do a squiggly down.
Sounds
This
very
was a
technical.
loop-de-loop.
Yeah, they're gonna do a loop. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's very technical. Yeah.
Actually, it's funny because I was going to ask you if your processes of collaboration have changed, especially as a result of things getting more challenging. Like, have there been times where it felt like, you know, I don't think this is working. Like, we're kind of going somewhere that's just weird, or it's not. Like, have you ever had to kind of backpedal on the stuff, or is it just, are you just perfect and it's always amazing?
Well, I mean, the only
Wait, who? Me? Perfect?
Well, all of you guys,
the only
you're fine. We already know about that. About you.
So the only example of something like that I can really think of is when we first started on Transistor and we were trying to figure out what Logan's character was going to sound like. We tried a lot of stuff that was like interesting from a theoretical place, but then it just didn't work out great for one reason or another, and we discovered sort of something we already knew, which was that leaning into the strengths of everybody on board is the way to go no matter what we're doing, and just finding a way to incorporate those strengths is going to be our best move. And so we kind of, I mean, a lot of the aspects of the beginning of Transistor were really challenging, where we were trying to like figure out what the music was going to sound, figure out what everything was going to be like, and we were really kind of looking at every aspect.
So,
you know?
Transistor is like, for a lot of people, their favorite Supergiant game, and whenever they like, but like,
Present company.
whenever they say that to any of us still at Supergiant who worked on Transistor, a bit of a shadow goes, because it was so hard.
It was very hard.
So scary.
Yeah, it was pretty scary. Yeah, for a lot of reasons. But so you know the only because after that time and after we sort of realized that our sort of best strategy is going to be to really sort of play to everybody's strengths as much as we can. Then we've done that since, and even when we're trying stuff that's more adventurous, it's adventurous in a direction that we know people are going to be able to pull off who we're trying.
Yeah.
You know, it's like, if that makes sense.
Yeah, you're not putting people in places that is sort of setting them up to fail.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and that's the kind of thing, like from earlier, where there's no way to even know where those places are unless you have literal years of experience kind of in the trenches together.
Yep.
Knowing where someone's kind of outside their comfort zone, but inside their, you know, broader ability zone, or whatever you want to think of it as. That's impossible. You can't just intuit that generally about somebody. You really have to have those hundreds of hours of shared time.
Yeah.
And it's very much like a teaching hospital. You know that, like, you know that phrase?
Everybody wants to get their surgery
No,
done
but
there.
Yeah. No, but it's like if we're doing
know that.
something
What
and
does that
he
mean?
wants, it's like while
A
we're
teaching
doing
hospital?
it, yeah, it's like you're teaching it at the hospital. You never heard of
It's
that?
like a test kitchen,
It's
you know?
rare.
It's where
It's
the
where
medical students are.
Are doing doctor work
Where
to
you, like,
learn how to do.
you have like a
doctor work.
cadaver.
I had an example that would help you. No, like
I just wanted.
my example of a teaching hospital hospital is like when Darren would say, I want it to sound like this, and then I'd be like, I don't know how to do that with my voice, and then it'd be like, let me coach you on how to do this with your voice. And so it's like we're recording and he's teaching me at the same time. Does he not do that with you? Are you perfect all the time?
We've known each other since we were 14. We waste a lot of time. No.
There's a lot of like,
No, you'll give me a note. It's like, oh, it's like, you remember this movie with like this actor? I'm like, oh yeah. Is he still alive? Oh, I don't know.
let me IMDb that.
He is still alive. He was on The Good Wife 3 years ago. He does mostly voiceover now. And like 20 minutes have gone by.
And then we'll quote Lord of the Rings for 15 minutes, and then we'll get back to work.
I don't work by the hour.
Yeah, our sessions don't go like that. It's not the same. Yeah. They're
Darren,
just
taskmaster with you? Is that what we're...
No, but they're just, it's more of a teaching hospital.
What is a teaching hospital? We're trapped in a loop. Well, I could just keep asking. We have a microphone. We have 2 microphones. I would say let's queue up now because I love this part, and I would love to just let you guys speak to. Well, all right, that's plenty to justify. You know what? If there's any other stories you wanted to, we didn't really touch on Pyre or Hades.
Yeah.
So, wild card. Anything you want to share about those experiences, especially Hades being an open access? That's a very different kind of thing than the previous 2 games. How's that been? How's that just kind of doling it out in pieces? It's obviously been well received.
I mean, I've really been enjoying the sort of early access process because you don't have to wait a full 3 years to see if people like it. You can kind of get feedback and then react to it and keep going. And that's been really exciting, being able to sort of respond to player feedback in almost real time has been fantastic. And it's really been a treat to sort of, from a voiceover standpoint, on this game, it's like our most ambitious voiceover-wise in terms of how many lines we have. Logan plays like 6 characters in this game. And it's a ton. We're working with a lot of actors, and I do some voiceover stuff for it, and it's
Some.
I do a pretty good chunk of voiceover stuff for it. And it's been an incredible blast, and I'm really finally glad to have been able to incorporate more Ashley singing into the game, and there'll be more to come. So, yeah,
Well, in the material, again, you in my opinion, you're always finding ways to kind of do things that are simultaneously very you. The moment you hear it, you know, that's Darren. There's no doubt about it. And yet it's like, it's new. It's not, it doesn't sound like Pyre. It doesn't sound like Transistor. It doesn't sound like Bastion. And yeah, it's exciting. My official line is I'm waiting until you're out of early access because I've just been negligent and a shitty friend. But no, it's awesome. Let's just take some questions and try to get through as many as we can, and then also preemptively about next door.
Yes. So some of you waited in the line for a really long time after our concert last night and didn't get a chance to see us because we got kicked out of the building, and I'm so sorry. And if you have posters that you would like to get signed, we're going to be in room 208 after this.
Right next door.
Right next door. So please come there.
For how long?
We'll be there for 1 hour.
Yeah, it's pretty strict 1 hour.
Yeah, strict 1 hour. We got to get out of there at 4:30. But 5:30.
4:30.
Yes, that's what I mean.
And thank you all again for those of you that stood in line for like twice the length of the actual concerts.
Yeah, for real.
Just insane. Very grateful. Why don't we kick it off with you?
Hi, so I have a question for Darren. It's kind of a bit of a two-parter. So the first part is when you're given a piece of music, I guess from the dev team, the game writers and stuff, what is your creative process for kind of getting the sound and creating that piece of music? And for the second part, when you've given that piece of music back in your time at Supergiant, have you ever found that the game has actually been changed because of that music to sort of fit that music?
Yeah, so for the first part, I believe the question was about like how do I choose like what a piece of music is going to sound like?
Yeah, your creative process.
Yeah, so for me, a lot of that starts sort of at the very beginning of a project where I do a lot of experimentation to determine what the musical palette is going to be and what the music of that world is going to sound like and what instruments are going to be used and sort of create a set of rules for myself to follow for the music for that project. And so a lot of that stuff is a sort of meta look at what the music will sound like. And then for a specific piece, I'm trying to think about what's the tonal goal of this piece specifically, what's it trying to accomplish emotionally, how is it going to be used in the game, et cetera, all that stuff. For the second part, it was about, so I have experienced music going in and then seeing the game sort of react to the music going in.
Yeah, like does the game change because of your music?
Yeah, I've noticed that a couple of times. I think especially on Bastion, the best example I can think of is Build That Wall, and sort of when that goes in, we sort of work together to essentially build the level around hearing this song, and when you meet Zia, and it's sort of like a spiral around this central location where Zia is, and you hear the song sort of coming from all directions, and you're sort of circling around it and getting closer and closer, and the narrator is kind of talking about the song and referencing lyrics in the song, and so yeah, certainly I think that's a pretty good example of the game being heavily affected by the song going in.
Great, thank you very much.
And that's a pretty rare dynamic that you're so integrated. It's so awesome. Over here.
Hi. So I know when I get into a project where I'm just sort of throwing myself in head first and learning as I go, I always hit that point where a few tasks down the line, I've sort of learned the process a little better and worked some of the kinks out. It sounds like that's at least somewhat an experience you've had as well. So I was wondering, what were some of the most important things that you'd say you sort of learned as you went and refined your process with?
Well, how to use audio middleware is one that I just didn't know at all when I started working on Bastion, and didn't really have an understanding of until about halfway through Transistor, because we were using this wonky middleware for Bastion that was free, until we started using kind of a proper one for Transistor. And then finally on Pyre, I started to well, I think I know how to do this. Let me just try some stuff and see if I can make it happen. So that certainly working with implementation and middleware and trying to incorporate the sounds and the music into the game and work with sort of dynamic stuff from that perspective is an area where I definitely learned as I went and had to iterate, and sound design sort of more generally, I had to just kind of figure out how just learn how to approach sound design in a way that I thought was effective. As I said earlier, starting from realism and being okay, well, that obviously doesn't work, and kind of zooming in and zooming in and zooming in and making it bigger and bigger and bigger, sort of, was what I discovered. Oh, okay, I just need to make a creative choice, make it, and have it accomplish certain things. I want the player to notice it. I want it to have this type of feedback for the player. I don't want it to be annoying, but I do want it to be noticeable, and sort of kind of going down the list, does it accomplish these things that I want it to accomplish? How does it fit with the palette of the game and that sort of thing?
Awesome, thank you.
Hi, so a bit of a design and music question. Transistor, especially compared to Bastion, had a lot more sort of interactive music. When you paused in a lot of sections, the music changed a lot. And also, as you mentioned, I think earlier, boss battles had a lot of different sections that changed over time. Was this sort of a design that you wanted to do from the very beginning, or is this something that developed during the game's development? Yeah.
We wanted it to be a more deliberate gameplay, for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think the decision to be a little bit more adventurous with sort of dynamic music stuff happening in the game was one we made at the beginning of the project, because we had someone join the team who had some experience working with Fmod, which was this middleware that we used on that project, who kind of knew how to do some of that stuff already. So, and I had been excited to try that stuff, and I thought, okay, well, here's let's do some experiments with this, and kind of right away I started experimenting with that and what that would mean for the game and how we could incorporate it into the game.
Thank you.
It's pretty tricky to reverse engineer that stuff also anyway.
Yeah. Yes.
To just after the fact go, oh, let's just make it interactive.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So for each of you, what was the hardest song, whether it be writing the song, playing the music, or singing the song?
So I missed the first part of the question. What was the hardest?
What would be the hardest song for each of you?
The hardest song. Okay. You want to go first?
I think it might be Paper Boats, because it's, emotional and also just hard notes to sing that are high. So paper boats, yeah.
It's both. It's low and high.
Yes, that's also.
It's got all the notes in it.
Yep.
Yeah. Gosh, for me, the hardest one, oh, geez. I think in terms of non-vocal pieces, the God of the Dead from Hades was like something that I had ambitions to do. Like, I just wanted to go to sort of like the edge of where I was comfortable in terms of like how metal can I get, and still like enjoy it and be able to play it
My
and stuff.
husband's
Is that not
favorite song.
is that not the question we ask ourselves?
How metal can I possibly be? And so I just sort of like wrote this thing when I was trying to figure out what the tempo would be for it, for the fast part. I was like, well, how fast can I possibly play this? Let me just dial it back a little bit so I can play it like well enough, you know? and it's like, okay, that's the tempo. Like, let's go. So that one was a challenge in that I just tried to like kind of go maximum as much as possible for that one.
There's a song that is exclusive to the Bastion soundtrack called the Pantheon that Rux sings, and that's the one and only song that I sung, I think. That's my hardest because I can't sing.
We should have put,
Yeah, I when we were doing that, I knew, I was like,
You had to rewrite it.
well, no, I just changed the key. I just changed the key. I made it lower.
Yeah.
I made it lower. No, I mean, you did an incredible job. I wrote basically like, I thought Rux sounds essentially like a Western Tom Waits, so let me just write a Tom Waits song for Logan to sing.
I'm so happy you did.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it was both your easiest and hardest challenge.
Yes.
and only.
I want you to do another one someday.
Awesome, thanks.
Hi. So, Bastion and Transistor, fairly short games. Pyre starts getting a little bit longer and starts playing more, especially toward the end, with both mechanically and thematically with a lot of repetition. And now, of course, you're on Hades, where there's even more of that, and it can be a very long game if you're playing it as poorly as I am. And then, but also it's so focused on continuing that loop on and on. For singing, for voice acting, and for the composition and sound design, how does that scope and that theme, both mechanically and thematically, like change how you approach it?
Yeah, it's tough because on Pyre we started experimenting with ways to sort of extend the life of the music because it was about maybe twice as long as the previous game we had made, but I didn't plan to write like exponentially more music or anything. So I wrote some. It definitely ended up having like a couple hours of music in the game, but we really tried to make the sort of dynamic implementation of music be really present so that the music wouldn't get repetitive if you hear it over and over again, because even if you hear it over and over again, depending on what you're doing, it's going to be a very different presentation, a very different arrangement of the music. So it will feel less repetitive was sort of the theory. And I've sort of taken that forward into Hades because, we know you're going to hear this music a lot. But luckily, I've found that because of the structure of a run, it has these sort of moments where the music can change and where the music can build and sort of helps feel like your run is like scored, by turning stems on and moving to new sections at certain times. It can really help you feel that way. And I've got enough music in there now. I'm planning to add some more for the over the course of runs and that you don't hear them too frequently actually, because the time between you hearing them is like an hour or two maybe, you know what I mean, or maybe more depending. So that's sort of what I discovered once people started playing it a lot and once I started playing it a lot, that because of the structure of the game, we were able to kind of get away with, it's still a bunch of music in that game in terms of time. I mean, it's the longest soundtrack I made so far, and I'm adding a lot more music to it. But yeah, we were able to kind of get away with some of that, I think.
Thanks.
Yeah.
The end credit song of Pyre seemed to change depending on what you did during the game. And when I was listening, all I could imagine was Wow, that must have been hard to record.
It was. I remember, weren't there like 16 verses, or there was something insane?
Well, so yeah, there were like 10, I think there were like 10 verses, or 10 or 11 verses, like one for kind of each character in your party, including you. And then each of those had 3 variants, no, 2 variants. And then there was like a sort of, depending on what gender you chose for your character, there were like 3 more variants. So there were like 6, essentially, versions that it would pick, depending on what you did. And so we had markers in FMOD that would say, like, at this marker, if you made this choice, you know, flip the track to this vocal track. And if you made this choice, flip the track to that. So it was a pretty complicated thing to set up. And it's also like a 6 or 7 minute song or something.
Yeah.
So we had to record like a lot of vocals for that one. Yeah. Ashley and I.
You better have actually sat through the end credits then, because a lot of work went into a thankless task.
You also had to make sure that you did the gender right, because there's so many different changes.
Yeah.
So it was like I had to read really closely to make sure I said the right thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yes, it was hard.
Yes.
That's why I don't sing.
Thank you.
Hi. So my question's a bit of a 3-parter, but I also do have a friend who wanted to say hi. As for my question, as I said, it's a bit of a 3-parter, and that has to do with Red in Transistor. And it's basically, you know, part Ashley and part Logan, who basically act as Red's voice. So what kind of challenges did you have to overcome in terms of singing and composing to kind of get off, you know, this is Red, this is her expressing herself, kind of getting her characters through with her singing, her humming, and also like through Logan as Blue? Mm-hmm. What were the challenges you had to face with that?
Oh, wow. Yeah, it's a cool question. Yeah, there were many of them. I mean, I think one of the challenges early on we faced specifically with delivering the story, you know, coming from Bastion, we had a sort of omniscient narrator. And in Transistor, Logan's character is in the world experiencing it alongside Red. Mm-hmm. So it really changed what kind of information we were able to deliver to the player through that mechanism. So it really took a lot of fine-tuning and a lot of iteration, I remember. And a lot of what really what really kind of fleshed out Red's character, I think, is the way that Logan's character responds to her. And like at the terminals and stuff, you'll see, you know, it gives Red a chance to actually say stuff, sort of, and then Logan can respond. Transistor can respond in turn. And as far as the humming and the singing goes, that was a really important part of giving her a voice and making her feel like a character in the game, I think. And I knew that because she was a singer, that was a really important thing to me to incorporate sort of as much as possible throughout the game. And then the notion of when you drop into turn mode, having the sort of, you know, my thought was, well, you're inside Red's head. She's planning what she's about to do. What obviously would be inside her head is this something musical.
And the hum button, I remember originally you do the hum button, she would hum, and then at the end, the Transistor would like react to it. He would say something, be like, oh God, I love that song.
Yeah.
That's a great one. And then as we got to the end of development, we're all playtesting it, and I experienced that for the first time. I was like, no, he shouldn't say anything. That's for Red.
Yeah.
That's in Red's head.
Yeah.
That's just like a moment of like respite for her. So like he shouldn't be aware of that at all. But acting-wise, it was just like versus Bastion. Like Rux, he's not like a caricature, but he's very much like a voice. So like if a take was good, it was good because it sounded like Rux. But with Transistor, if a take was good, it was because like the acting was good. So I just had to focus on that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I think we got time for one more. So I think you're going to be our grand finale. Sorry, but as a reminder, we'll be heading next door.
Yeah.
So this is going to be like the most amazing question, right?
Yeah. Great, thanks for putting the pressure on me. Okay, question for Darren. Let's talk about that some voice acting you do for Hades, specifically the fact that you voice Zagreus.
Yeah.
How did that happen?
Basically, we were trying some stuff for Zagreus. We tried a few things. We had a couple of people audition for Zagreus. I took a stab at just like doing some scratch stuff in the characterization that we had talked about on team, and everybody just kind of liked my scratch stuff the best. So I ended up doing it. I was like, okay, I guess I'm doing this.
And he's cheap.
And I'm cheap, yeah.
And like, how did you come up with that voice?
We sort of envisioned him as like sort of a, moody, mischievous, almost like a Tom Hiddleston as Loki, like almost.
He's like the Jesus of hell.
Yeah, I mean, yeah. And I thought of people. We talked about people like Asa Butterfield. I don't know how you pronounce his first name. Asa Butterfield, for example, as someone who was like, oh, that guy. I bet he'd be good at this. So I looked at some.
Not just because he's a fan.
No, just because. Yeah, he wrote us a letter when Bastion came out. Actually, yeah, that was very sweet. But yeah, it mostly I looked at Tom Hiddleston's Loki like as like a jumping off point for Zagreus.
Well, if you could all help me thank these brilliant Logan Cunningham. Ashley Barrett, who is doing her first panel ever. And the genius, Darren Korb.